morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Just like to share a little bit of the agenda. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about our service provider community, the members of the Broadband Forum. We'll talk a little bit about what is SPAC and the evolution that we're going to go through. And then we'd like to share what I would call a work in progress around what we're defining as SPAC vision. Especially with focus on a services-driven network with subtopics around the evolution of the home, network and service convergence, which will be presented by Manuel Paul from Deutsche Telekom, and then cloud-based network and service enablement, which will be presented by Weichang Chang from China Mobile. And then I'm going to hand it back to Craig Thomas for a little bit of summary and some takeaways, which will lead us into the next presentation. When we look at our service provider community, a significant portion of the Broadband Forum, over 160 members of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 providers. We've got an additional 30 new members in the last year. Part of one of the objectives of the presentation today is an invitation and solicitation to bring in additional service providers. The content you'll hear from us today is very focused on a vision from 3 of the Tier 1s that are participants in the Broadband Forum. But it's not our objective to manhandle or be the elephant in the china shop, so to say. It's really a call to include, from an industry perspective, the vision across the board from a Tier 1 to Tier 3 service provider perspective. Looking at the evolution of SPAC, we got together this year and really wanted to clarify our focus in bringing the service provider industry together. We wanted to address and support service provider needs. We're going to do that by collectively listening to the voice of service providers. That's Tier 1 through Tier 3 service providers, and then come together to establish a global vision. And that global vision is not a fixed vision. It's what I would say a constantly updated, growing, working vision that is used to directionally and informationally drive the efforts across the work groups, so that, as we move forward from a standards perspective, the work groups are really, driving standards with respect to that global vision. We want to make sure that we align with the Broadband Forum strategy, and then more importantly, the existing industry-driven standards as an opportunity to update those standards or provide new standards when we see that there are gaps in those standards to move forward. From an evolution and goal perspective, we want to make sure what we are driving, the vision that we're providing, is deployable in live networks. It doesn't do any of us any good to drive new standards that no one will deploy. That seems to be very obvious, but we wanted to make sure and clarify that as we move forward. We want to introduce this vision with an opportunity, since we will have alignment across the industry, to shorten the cycle on these new services and new functionalities that we're going to bring forward. Standards groups are inherently lethargic. However, we believe from a Service Provider Action Council, if we can come together and bring service providers into alignment and share that vision across the industry and share that vision across the different standards organizations, that we should be able to become a little bit more agile and really introduce these new services and functions with shorter cycles. And this introduction of standards is not only open for all service providers' benefit, but it's at the benefit of the industry, the vendors, and the suppliers. When we talk about the movement to a services-based architecture, what are we talking about? Traditionally we have, our broadband subscribers that subscribe to internet, they subscribe to, video services, but we see an opportunity to shift into what we will call a services-based architecture. This services-based architecture should provide an opportunity for increased quality of experience for our subscribers, and then obviously, provide an opportunity for additional revenue, not only to the service provider, but to the vendor supporting these services. When we look at some of the important areas, providing end-to-end quality of service and security requirements, targeted at a customer specific and/or application that could be deployed to that customer. We see that services, very well defined in 5G mobility, in 3GPP. So we're going to listen and look very closely at that model and make sure we can leverage it and not reinvent that model, but then start to apply that model from mobility into the fixed environment as we see that area starting to converge, as well as take that model, across existing wireline infrastructure, DSL, cable, fiber, and other access technologies. It's important for us to standardize that architecture, so that we're not reinventing the wheel at every corner, and then allowing service providers, vendors, and suppliers to really focus on differentiation for themselves and for their specific areas that they're working on. We see software-driven solutions really providing that opportunity for additional services into the industry. And then, the whole reason we're getting together from a Service Provider Action Council is we want to characterize that across the whole broadband ecosystem. So it's not just about the home, it's not just about the network, it's about the edge, it's about the core, it's about access. It's an end-to-end defined solution, standardized in it and standardized specifically so that we can take advantage of it and then focus on the differentiation I mentioned earlier. I'd like to now jump into what I will call the evolution of the home vision, something that we've been working on. And again, I do want to preface my presentation in that this is work in progress. This is not final. This is not our end all, get all. This is really an introduction to what we believe is the evolution of the home vision. When we look at our customer, obviously our customers are king. They're the most important. We see that, customers continue to want to just consume. So from a service provider perspective, it's very important that we make this very transparent with respect to coverage and services inside or outside the home. We see our customers and subscribers, they don't want to be bothered with the how or the why. It just needs to work. It needs to work effectively, and it needs to work very transparently. It should be convenient. They shouldn't have to worry about it. It is going to drive the need for service providers to have adequate tools to be able to manage, control, and to proactively understand and ensure that quality of experience for their subscribers. That is not a small task as we look at standards and we look at the ability to meet our customer needs. COVID, 2020 has been a challenging year. 2021 is still probably continuing with that challenge. What has it taught us? And, we could look back and say it's taught us a lot, but realistically, it hasn't taught us anything except for the need to address subscriber services is being accelerated. We see folks working from home. We see educators teaching from home. We see students learning from home. So it's going to be important to meet that context and provide them with the best broadband connection and services to meet them. The consumer, the homeworker's employer, and then the applications that are going to be provided behind those solutions. When we look at speed, reliability, and quality of experience as becoming very important to each other, there could be application-specific needs that would drive reliability specifically, or speed specifically, or potentially latency-sensitive applications. Uh, we do look at broadband, both internal and wired connectivity, as seen as the same service. Realistically, from a consumer perspective, how they're getting their broadband is not as important as the ability to consume the services behind that broadband connection. Moving into the complexity of the home, yesterday we saw, services in the home being delivered over 5G, over cable, over fiber to the home, over FTTP, over coax, over a number of mediums. But inside the home, we see a lot of complexity, and that complexity is being driven by the amount of devices that are exploding in the home. We see IoT devices being connected via Wi-Fi or other types of technology. We see Ethernet, MoCA, and G.hn as both wired technologies that are introduced in the home, as well as the introduction of 6 gigahertz in the Wi-Fi scenario. So imagine that we have all these different mediums introducing connectivity inside the home for connectivity into things like existing TVs or new streaming services. And we see, that breakdown between the legacy QAM services and now streaming services, probably about 50-50. We see wearables is starting to very much take hold. We look at the opportunity to support both XR and gaming type applications, which in the past were primarily connected over wired mediums, now is potentially an opportunity to be connected over wireless mediums. And so what does that mean? That means that, we're going to need to specifically manage that quality of experience independent based upon how that end user service or device is connected to their home network. The vision, a services-driven modular software residential gateway. Why is this so important? When we look at the ability to instantiate a new application and integrate it into into an existing gateway, that timeline has been very challenging. From the instantiation of a new product for a service provider, moving from an RFP into the development of the hardware, and then the development of the software stack supporting that hardware, and now integrating applications into that embedded stack, we see that timeline is very lethargic. And if we're going to look at the ability to introduce services on top, we need to be more agile. We need to be able to get those services in front of our customers in a hurry. 12 months, 18 months is not acceptable. Time will pass us by. Technology is moving very quickly. When we look, for example, and step back into the COVID conversation, the ability to work or learn from home, how do we get those additional quality of service mechanisms in place? How do we potentially instantiate, a VPN connection to allow for those subscribers to more effectively work or learn from home? When we look at IoT, there's a plethora of IoT applications that are out there. So many I won't even start to list them today. But if I was to integrate a single IoT application into my router, well, what about the other applications that are out there? How do I address those? Security solutions. Everyone is very concerned about security, including the service providers, but a single security application might not meet that end user requirement. We may see some people looking for advanced security requirements. And if I embed that advanced security into my RG, it limits the flexibility to my subscribers. It also burdens that residential gateway with a potential solution that every subscriber may not use. Parental controls may be very important to a young family, but maybe not important to, an older, mature family that their little ones have left the nest and they're on their own. We also look at the importance of additional network management solutions. The self-optimizing network really ensuring the quality of service for those endpoint devices, but the ability to instantiate things like a speed test or remotely manage that device. So we're looking at the instantiation of what we'll call a modular router stack. We've been working very closely with prpl, and I'd like to introduce you to what we'll call the prpl framework. It is based on OpenWRT. However, it's hardened to meet the carrier requirements of a hardened application. It includes the flexibility of being able to drop in applications up on top of the stack, and those applications may be consumer-facing applications like parental controls, like advanced security, like work from home solutions. We may introduce applications that support operational and business service requirements. We may want to introduce something like an application classifier to allow for convergence between the network and the home, allowing for that additional end-to-end network management, ensuring quality of experience. We will obviously need an ability to lifecycle manage these applications. So being able to drop them into this framework, being able to start them, stop them, conditionally access, support them, but more importantly, the ability to now customize that residential gateway specifically to customer needs. So I don't need to load all these applications on my residential gateway moving forward. I'm able to support them on a per subscriber basis. So if I've got a subscriber that is just interested in advanced parental controls, I can drop in that parental controls module and I can do it very quickly and easily without affecting the stack. We are looking at using USP, or the User Services Platform, TR 469, in the opportunity to bring those down and manage application to application communication, as well as drive a common interface into the stack. We are looking to abstract away from the SOC. As we look at our objective in being more agile moving forward, if we're able to have this common stack and be able to drop in applications, it's important to be able to take that stack and be able to implement it upon any SOC that's out there quickly and easily. So we're asking the suppliers, the Broadcoms, the Qualcomms, the Intels, the MediaTeks, the MaxLinears of the world to really look at this and start to make that infrastructure more common and standardize that common stack, or help us standardize that stack so that we're not writing one-off implementations every time that we create a new piece of hardware. When we look at the ecosystem needed to support this, we look at the need to bring this information up into a common data lake, things like remote management. We talked about our operational and business support systems, the ability to drop analytics, and machine learning on top of that data is going to be very important, so we can take immediate action to ensure that quality of experience. And then we want to be able to understand that end-to-end performance so that we're able to, again, meet that quality of experience. We see the introduction of the concept of an app store, and the app store probably is not going to look like something you would see on iOS or Android today, but more importantly, something that we would allow for our subscribers to be able to access that enhanced security, those parental controls, and have that level of selectability, if not at the instantiation of their new service, but post that new service as their changes are embellished or needed moving down the road. We see for the need to be able to connect into edge compute for those latency sensitive applications, things like XR applications, things like network managed that need immediate responses, potentially health type applications that could be time sensitive may need to sit in the edge, not sit in the core. So we see this ecosystem needed to evolve, and it's not just the residential gateway that's evolving, it's going to be the entire ecosystem from end to end. That said, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Manuel Paul from Deutsche Telekom, who is going to talk us through a little bit of network and service convergence vision. Manuel?
Thank you very much, Mike, and hello to everybody. It's a perfect chance for me, so thanks very much for that, to add to and combine the network and service convergence vision with the services and the importance of the experience for the customer that Mike has talked about. So let's take together a look into 5G and how that has brought new opportunities, but also a plethora of new services to the network and to us at the Broadband Forum. And we as SPAC service providers have worked on 5G and on convergence since the larger industry vision on 5G has evolved within the industry. And I would like to share both some updates as well as just explain on where we are and opportunities to work with us. So first of all, as Site 5G is not just an effort that Broadband Forum has been involved with, but it's a larger effort in the industry, which has been shaped by originally the mobile ecosystem pretty much, and also standardization development organizations like SwitchBP. But we at Broadband Forum, we have definitely had our contribution, and we continue to work as service providers to address the needs, which most of all is exactly the improved service experience for customers, which advanced connectivity with the 5G ecosystem and technology offers. We have also looked at, in particular, at the opportunity to converge and streamline network assets and network functions. And last but not least, automation is a key topic. And so we are talking about a toolkit when we look at 5G and its technologies. And there are multiple enablers that we are looking at and that we are leveraging in order to provide a better and a greater service QoS and managed QoS, as well as to leverage the assets, the different access networks. Mike has already introduced cable, wireline, wireless more efficiently, and that allows us then to use the specified technologies as well as our assets as service providers as efficiently as possible. So for us, a smart gateway or smart gateways, both at the customer, at residential and business, as well as in the network, are key. And the service and convergence vision allows leveraging 5G core network assets to actually leverage multi-access capabilities that are built into this technology, so that we have a better way, independently of the access, to deliver our services and to provide for an improved and, as said, more seamless experience across accesses, which may combine mobility as needed or nomadicity. However, for us at Broadband Forum, it is pretty much also the residential gateway as a smart gateway, which can leverage the technology that Mike has introduced in greater detail on the gateway to provide the modern and more advanced service capabilities. However, the network evolution, and particularly also the upgrades that service providers would do need to be smooth. And in that case, a key requirement of service providers has been that the specifications and then the technology implementations support smooth migration and coexistence as needed to give service providers the opportunity to evolve their networks at their own pace and their own demand. So let's look at the next slide, please, at the 5G wireless-wireline convergence effort in a bit of greater detail. Actually, I won't go into too much of a detail since there will be an update from David Allen just a little later today in the presentation. So please stay tuned for that. From a SPAC perspective and from a service provider perspective, Broadband Forum has been a key place, a key venue for us to drive 5G and convergence activities in cooperation with SWitch-PP. So that effort, driven by service providers, by operators, was established with the 5G evolution, and key specifications, which we call the first phase of specifications, were published in 2020, so last year, which have been addressing goals and use cases contributed by operators. And at this point, also here, we are not talking about having reached having finished everything. We are just making headway into our phase 2 completion. And so this work is also continuously driven and continues to be based on service providers' input, obviously, so that we can ensure that both the technical capabilities or requirements are addressed, as well as to ensure the set smooth transformation and migration options. So all in all, the 5G WWC effort has been established by service providers at BBF. It is ongoing, and at this point in the current set phase, we're looking particularly at the 5G residential gateway, which I would like to talk to a little bit more on the next slide. The 5G residential gateway is a key element. So what does it actually mean, 5G residential gateway? First of all, it is a gateway that is capable to talk to or connect to a 5G core network across an WWC-enabled access. So that means wireless, wireline, or if you will, a converged access, since we are using mediation functions wherever needed to support the connectivity to 5G, to the 5G core network across an existing and unmodified access network. And we also actually, as service providers, have been interested in leveraging the deployed gear for the residential gateways. However, the 5G residential gateway brings the full capabilities that are built into 5G and the set toolkit. And the 5G residential gateway unlocks sort of the greatest and full extent of the control management plane and built-in technology capabilities of the 5G ecosystem. Now, as we are talking about a phase where we are evolving to a new element, it is key that the standards, the specifications are complemented by implementations that are compliant and capable, meaning compliant to the specifications. And we have actually been just setting off a new effort and setting in place a new initiative which addresses a reference solution stack, a reference implementation for a 5G residential gateway, which includes an open source reference software kit. And the integration in collaboration with the services frameworks, OpenWRT and RDKB for residential gateways to provide a full carrier-grade and production-ready solution. So at this point, that is a great opportunity for operators as well as the supply chain that we are calling out to, and would like to really warmly invite to join us on this effort, as we are looking forward to increasing the adoption and putting in place a reference for 5G, RG, BBF compliant implementations. At this point, I would like to thank you very much for my end for the attention, and hand over to Wei Cheng for the cloud-based network.
Okay, thank you, Mike and Manu. I think 5G is using service-based architecture, and with the large-scale deployment of 5G, FV-based core network has been widely deployed in the FV cloud. The control plane and the user plane of the gateways are separated deployed. Centralized control plane provide flexibility and scalability. Distributed user plane provides high performance forwarding. So it is a very successful solution. The advantage is obvious: a high utilization, simple maintenance, and high performance. Compared to 5G, fixed broadband networks are slower to deploy to the cloud. I think many operators are considering how to move the fixed broadband gateway to cloud also. Here we would like to provide some consideration. Next page. So as you know, China Mobile has a very large number of fixed broadband subscribers and wireless users. When we consider the cloud-based architecture for both fixed broadband and 5G, we found the situation are totally different. In the left table, you can see the main traffic of fixed broadband is video, such as IPTV, which need a high bandwidth and large burst. While the 5G or 4G is a full application services, which need a smaller bandwidth and burst. In the right figure, you can also see the deployment requirement. It's very interesting. The both of them are totally different. The control plane of a fixed broadband may located in the province center, and the user plane is located in the county or the district. While the 5G control plane is more centralized, it may be in the national region, and the user plane can be deployed in different levels, such as the province, cities, counties, and the campus with MEC located. As such, we hope to consider the different cloud-based solution for the fixed broadband from the wireless broadband. So next page. Here is a very simple use case in China Mobile. For the fixed broadband, we would like to introduce dedicated dBNG solution. Here I list 4 our design principles. The first one is we would like to introduce a fixed access service only solution. That means that we don't want to mix the wireless and the fixed service solution together. And the second, because we just focus on the fixed broadband network, we can keep the protocol very simple. Instead of use PFCP protocol, we are using the TCP-based simple protocol. And we prefer to use the abstract session model, which provide a very simple but accurate modeling for the interface. And the last one is we avoid to use the management interface to keep the system decoupling. So with these 4 principles, we have achieved multiple vendors interoperation, and we proposed the simple dBNG solution and verified that by several vendors production. And we also have some field trial in our network. And the result is very good. We can get the vendor lock free. Now we have set up a new project named WT487 in BBF ATA working group. We are looking for more service providers support for it. About the details, my colleague Meng Li will give a presentation in the summit this week. The presentation will be on the Thursday session. If you are interested in it, welcome to join the session. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wei Chung. And I think that's a great segue to, a call to action to everybody. When we are looking at the services-driven network, there are going to be multiple service providers with multiple needs across the dBNG, but across the entire broadband ecosystem. And what we are within the Service Provider Action Council is involving and recognizing those service providers' needs in how to enable that service-driven network. And the dBNG is just one example of that. So they are both a fixed network dBNG requirement as well as a multi-service, wireless and wireline converged dBNG need. And the Service Provider Action Council needs to recognize that and represent the service provider's needs across both of those 2 types of network needs and architectures. But the key point here from a service-driven network perspective is that not one part of the network stands alone as a single island. We have to come together as a service provider community and influence the standards and influence the vendors and the open source, open broadband needs across the entire ecosystem if we are truly going to see a service-driven network that is one joined up thinking, if you like, from the edge. We've talked about the home environment, whether that's both a fixed or a 5G RG or a mixed hybrid environment, but also the access network, the service management, the edge core, and the cloud CO. It has to be a joined up discussion. And we really ask you as a service provider community to come and join us, to let us understand your needs. Because it's not just from a standards point of view. If we move to the next slide, your needs are across your entire service provider community, whether that's the network planning, the operational side, the product and service marketing and definition, as well as your customer support, as well as what is probably the Broadband Forum is most renowned for, its engineering requirements too and standards work. So we ask you from a service provider community to come and join us and help us influence where the service-driven network should be moving forward, not just in the next 12 or 18 months, but in the next 4 or 5 years, so that we can influence the vendors and the open standards. That is really going to mean a lot to you as a service provider, not just as an engineering department. So get involved. We're happy to hear from you. Even if you're not members of the Broadband Forum, we would be happy to invite you in as guests to understand how the Service Provider Action Council works and how you can get involved yourself. So why would you get involved? Well, moving to the next slide, there are some significant benefits, and please build this one up in its entirety, Mike. First of all, it's recognizing those common goals. Generally speaking, whether you're a large tier 1 or the smallest of operators, probably 70–80% of your needs are common, whatever size of service provider you are. So if we can work together by driving those common goals and those common needs into open standards that will reduce your time to market and your investment in R&D, then you can focus on how to differentiate and what's your differentiators, whatever size of market to whatever target customer you have. So recognizing those common goals and building on them so you can focus on where you need to differentiate. And by doing that, you build a collective voice. You're influencing the industry as a collective voice for service providers around the globe. And you're influencing what we will be doing as an SDO and a Broadband Forum itself in our own open standards work. So that collective voice, of course, means a greater influence on where to move forward from a standards perspective. And when you are driving that, you're driving also down your investment costs. Because we are going to do the open standards work that the BBF is famous for, you don't have to spend so much time in R&D, as I said earlier. You can focus on where you differentiate and accept the interop work and the certification work that we do, and Lincoln will be speaking about this straight after this presentation, about helping you drive down those investment costs so that you can just focus on where is unique to yourselves. And as I said earlier, we're driving a multi-service here across the entire broadband ecosystem and across all of your functions, whether that is engineering, customer support, operational, and we invite all those segments from your service provider organization to join the SPAC, not just the technical engineering departments. So come and join us. The invitation is open to any service provider, whatever your size. Thanks so much for your time. And on that note, I think I'd like to pass over to Ken and Lincoln.